everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Flipping the Barrel, a podcast where we interview leaders in the energy space to uncover and find out more about their careers and life journeys. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Kimberly Krieger, the COO at BPX Energy. Kim leads BP's U.S. onshore oil and gas business, where she's accountable for the safe and environmental responsible delivery of hydrocarbons and more than $2 billion in annual operating cash. Prior to joining BPX Energy in 2014, Kim held several leadership and engineering roles with BP in Alaska, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Gulf of Mexico that helped shape the leader she is today. Kim enjoys mentoring, innovation, and values lifelong learnings to stay on the leading edge. She has a passion for cultivating STEM interests within female students, as she thinks this is critical to develop female talent. She holds a bachelor's in petroleum engineering from University of Wyoming and is a 2017 graduate of the Stanford Graduate School of Business Executive Program. Kim and her husband work to balance their careers and treasure family time with their daughters, who are teenagers, and keep their lives busy. So Kim, thank you for being here today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Well, Kim, I am just so excited for this, and I know our listeners are just going to love hearing your story. And this first question resonates with me, especially having a young daughter. You grew up in beautiful Wyoming in the state of Colorado and had a great childhood there. During high school, your math teacher sparked an interest in you to pursue math and science, and eventually an engineering degree. Now that you have two teenage daughters, one in high school and one in college, can you tell us about the importance of sparking that STEM interest in young women in their younger years, and especially the impact that teachers have on their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of break this down into two parts. And essentially, I've always tried to reach out early. Part of it is just being a working mom as well. I'm looking for ways to get involved in my kids' education. And so, I would just say in my early involvement, I always volunteered at the career day. I, first year built a PowerPoint and it was full of pictures because it's hard to understand when you're, in first or second grade, what a petroleum engineer does, but they can understand pictures. So it was full of pictures. And I talked about all the cool experiences I had, whether it be in Alaska or going offshore and then, bringing it home to them. It's, because of all this, you can charge your iPad. And, just like helping them connect full circle, but also showing them how, cool and exciting my career was to me. Kind of secondly, being a mother, my husband as well, we'd always show the girls pictures of when we go to the field, or, videos that we've produced through the company that show, what we do if we start up a new platform. We show them things like that help them understand what mom and dad do when they go to work. One of my favorite stories is when my daughter in elementary school had told her teacher, "My mommy takes a helicopter to work." And I'd just been offshore for, sort of like 20 days and sent them some pictures of choppers landing on the platform, because you get to see a lot of choppers come and go when you're there for 21 days. But I loved them having those stories, right? How differential it was and what kind of conversations it prompted at school. Some of the other things that we've done are establishing at BPX, we've established a coding camp for middle school age girls at Stephen F. Austin. So we operate a lot in the Lufkin area. And so we were thinking about how do we take and provide some offerings for getting STEM related exposure to kids in areas that maybe don't have a lot of STEM mentorship at home or even career paths immediately around there to go after. So that was really fun. But I just think in general, the more you can get involved and show them the cool aspects of what we do, but how that ends up translating to, a meaningful career is really important. The whole reason that I'm driven to do this is because my high school calc and pre-calc teacher saw that I had an aptitude in the subject and encouraged me to explore STEM careers by attending an engineering summer camp. So my high school year, before I started my senior year in school, I did attend that camp, and it was a pivotal moment because it exposed me to engineering. There's no engineers in my family, so I had no idea what it was, what any type of engineering was. And so then I declared petroleum engineering as my major when I did go into college. And thanks to that camp and that math teacher in particular, it changed my life. And that's what drives me paying it forward. And so every year I always go and talk to my kids' math and science teachers, and I tell them my story, and I just really help them understand the mentorship role they play and how students relate to the subject, especially girls.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing. We've had a few women leaders on the podcast that very similar story. It was a math teacher that changed the perspective. And, when we do talk to younger women, especially in high school, they always either don't like math or they think they're not smart enough for math. And so teachers have such an important role. So thank you for sharing that, because they really, really do. So let's go back a little bit to your story. You graduated college in 1996. A lot of life-changing events happened that year. When you graduated, you got a job offer from BP to work in Alaska in the production department. You also got married to the love of your life, Andy, whom you met in college, and he also received a job offer for BP in Alaska, but in a different kind of work rotation to Prudhoe Bay. And you bought your first home in Anchorage, all within 2 months. Talk about exciting time. As much as we, think that these events are fantastic, they could also be very difficult because you had to be away from each other right at the beginning of a marriage, and where a lot of people maybe start settling in right away. You guys were ready to work and put a lot of effort and sacrifices towards both of your careers. And so how did you guys handle that hardship that maybe a lot of couples can't cope with early on?
Yeah, it was, when I look back, it blows my mind, everything we accomplished in about 6 weeks of time. But I would say moving 2,000 miles away from home, starting the careers and our marriage, as much as it was a challenge, it was a beautiful opportunity for us to solidify our relationship from the start, in a couple key areas. We had to learn how to communicate. And this was, I would say now, probably in the olden days, we didn't have FaceTime, we didn't have text. I think Andy had a pager maybe in his first assignment, but whether it's then or now, like how to effectively communicate and be comfortable really sharing very quickly how you're feeling so that things don't fester. But we needed to get to this place so that we could learn how to respect each other's needs. Because, marriage, just like a job, I mean, it's a partnership, it's a contract. You need to be able to thrive in it. And so learning how to rely on each other first was, the gift that, probably has given us 26 years and counting of marriage. But during our time together, because we were working rotations, especially Andy being in drilling more than me, but when we were together, we really tried to focus on maximizing the quality of our together time. So we built hobbies in common. This was Alaska, mind you. So we were camping and fishing and skiing and snowmobiling on our days off or on the weekends. And then we also maintained friendships with couples who also had healthy marriages. And I think that's really important because that gave us good role models to start modeling our marriage and attributes of our marriage after. So that was also really important. But I think, overall, you've got to have trust in each other because you're spending a good bit of time apart. Good communication patterns. You've got to learn to give grace. And those are things that have guided us from the start. I think, with both of us working in the industry, Andy's in drilling, I'm in production operations, we know what each other does at work, I guess. We also know kind of the players that are involved in his team or my team. And so this actually can be a positive at times because we can be sounding boards for each other and we talk work at home. We have great technical conversations. It can also be a negative because we never get away from it. So we also have to set boundary conditions at times on we're just going to leave work at work today and, just really focus on maybe talking about our next vacation or, just how each other's doing with, we're dealing with some transitions that the kids get into the teenage years and stuff. So I think it's just, again, making sure you're intentional about your communication patterns and you got to give some grace along the way.
What I really liked about what you shared was there's two aspects of it. Like y'all both have dual careers, so y'all relate on this level because y'all both understand each other, what you do at work, which can also, like you said, be very exciting to talk about when you're at home. But then also learning to when to shut that off and to really just be focused on you and your husband, or you, your husband and your kids, is very important as well. So I'm really glad that you highlighted that. And this kind of goes into what we were going to ask you about your assignment in Alaska, which was a developmental assignment when you're a well site leader, which required you to supervise experienced service company crews working on wells. And at the time, you were a pretty young engineer, so your team was definitely more experienced than you just because of the years they had in. And you mentioned it was difficult at first to get them to respect you, the site supervisor, and they weren't really taking you very seriously. And at the time, you were the only female on the well site as well. So this, entered a lot of challenges. And you really started to feel that imposter syndrome creeping in, which we have definitely heard a lot from a lot of leaders that have come on and talked about these experiences. One of your managers gave you some advice, and they mentioned that you should start using harsh words to elevate your voice to be heard. And as you can probably see listening to Kim on the podcast, she definitely would not be the one to come across with harsh words. So that didn't feel very natural to you. How did you overcome the situation and build that confidence, given that, even the advice that you got really didn't fit the person that you were?
Yeah, so it was a fantastic assignment. And I just, before I get started on the story, I just say that, if you're early in your career, the more time you can spend in the field, the better. It never gets easier with your personal life and the complexities of that and being away from home. But also, it's so important to understand how work gets done and to understand, the site safety challenges, as well as the realities of, a day that has minus 40-degree wind chill or rain or excessive heat. So I think it's really important to spend field time out there, especially if you're in a technical role. But so let me take you back to when I was 22 years old. I was supervising crews, definitely, that were far more experienced and subject matter experts for the most part in wireline or coil tubing, whatever it was that we were running that day. And, some of them maybe had worked for a female well site leader before, but they were few and far between. So, my role in it was the safe and efficient execution of the scope of work that the company had procured them to do. And, my reflection was I was in learning mode. It was a development assignment. And I clearly lacked, at the beginning, the confidence and the competence. So my competence grew quicker than my confidence. And, one particular crew, I had one crew that was amazing. And I think it was because there was a very, very experienced supervisor that had mentored many young engineers before. So this wasn't his first rodeo. There was another crew that was, kind of a bunch of type A males who probably didn't want to be pushed around by, a 22-year-old blonde girl that was struggling to get her words out. But I think, honestly, the real problem was that they were kind of blowing off. It wasn't that we were going to have a detrimental outcome, except for the fact they just weren't wearing their PPE. And, you think about that in 1996, that we were still struggling with it. It's more of a thing today. But I was talking to my supervisor, and yes, you're right. The coaching was, well, you just need to cuss assertively at them. They're not taking you seriously. And, I think I listened to the advice and I reflected on it that night. And I knew cussing assertively wasn't really who I was. And if I started to act like that, it wouldn't come across in an authentic manner.
Mm-hmm.
But I really tried to look through the intent of his coaching. And the coaching was, I needed to grab a gear in my confidence, because my confidence had grown, but my confidence had in asserting my accountability in the situation was delivering the company's site safety expectations to them. And once I established that, I needed to establish a consequence of failing to comply. And that was dismissal from location. So once we had that conversation, we had compliance and actually a much better working relationship. But it was really me asserting my accountability on the site in a way that was authentic, so that it was delivered in a more, more credible fashion and received constructively. But I think bringing that into the concept of imposter syndrome, it's, I recently heard a speaker describe it in a way that I thought was fantastic, and it's carried with me ever since. That, at the fundamental level, if you never have imposter syndrome, you're probably a jerk. And so I just want all the listeners out there to realize that some amount of it is really healthy, but there's also some of it that's very unhealthy. And this is the part of it that I really took away in my leadership every day, is that the healthy part of imposter syndrome is knowing you don't have subject matter domain, but being in a place where you're asking questions or you're engaging people that do, with the intent of learning, making the decision, moving the business forward, moving the project forward, right? So it's knowing what you don't know, but getting the resources to help you get there. The unhealthy part of imposter syndrome is really, you don't have subject matter domain, and that's preventing you from engaging those that do. It's preventing decisions, progress. Basically you're kind of in paralysis. So if you're sitting there with imposter syndrome and it's paralyzing you, that's a problem. If you're sitting there knowing you're in growth mode and you're understanding a new role or a new technical area of responsibility, and you're learning and you're progressing, it's just slower than you want, that's progress. So I think just look at where you sit on that continuum, and then, if you're stuck in paralysis, build a plan that gets you off that and into the growth and the progress part.
Thank you, Kim. I think one of the key takeaways throughout your whole career journey is that you've always just stayed true to yourself at the end of the day. And even from the very beginning, at 22 years old, you knew that putting up a font or a face and changing who you were back then, which is very easily to do, especially when you're not confident in those early stages of, I need to act like them, I need to be more like them. Throughout your journey, you've always stayed true to yourself. And I think that's part of your success. So thank you for sharing that. To the point of dual career, which is a very difficult thing to navigate. It's easier, but also very difficult because he understands what you're going through. You're both in the same company, but to your point, the benefit is also the negative part. And so when we spoke to you last time, with both you and Andy navigating your careers and climbing up the corporate ladder, you noticed that there was, Andy definitely climbed up the corporate ladder quicker than you. And this is something that a lot of women notice when they have a partner, not only in the same company, but just industry. What are some things that you can reflect back on why you think he advanced quicker than you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one to ponder. So I've been, I think about it every once in a while because I get asked it fairly regularly. And I think really for me, it was initially, I didn't have the clarity of what I really wanted. So then I didn't have the confidence to ask for it. And maybe when you say, okay, well, why didn't you have the clarity versus, Andy, I think when I was starting to maybe think about leadership, I was also thinking about starting a family. And that happened, we were married 8 years before kids. I was having so much fun being, an engineer and solving problems, and we were vacationing and having all kinds of fun. I wasn't ready, and we weren't ready as a couple to start our family. But as we started that journey, it was kind of, for me, probably in that space where I might have wanted that first team leader assignment. So, initially I chose kind of start the family route, but then we had the kids, they're 2 years apart. So there was, probably a 3-year span of my life where I was, pregnant or with newborns. I was still trying to figure out, okay, well, am I happy just being an engineer, or what do I really want to do? Because it's hard when you have little ones. It's super hard. So I think, for him, he probably had that clarity and that confidence, because he started in his leadership journey at, let's say, about that 8-year mark, right? And but part of what, when you know that you want to push into a more aggressive career path, let's say, there's a couple things I always coach people to is you need to have a track record. Like you can't just go into it with, well, I'm a female, so I need this role. And I would say my track record is that I've always tried to be a good team player. So as much as I want to deliver my work, I want to help others get there too. I wasn't fighting for the big, shiny new opportunity. I would always run to the big, hairy problems that were causing the most people pain, but weren't always the sexiest. So I would always try to solve the big, hairy problems. And by solving those problems, I think you really unlock sustainable performance improvement. And so I have a continuous improvement DNA about me and quality about my work. So I tried to make sure the track record and the value of that track record was there. I think in the first 15 years, because I didn't have that clarity and that confidence to ask, I let others manage my career for me. Mm-hmm. So once I started asking for what I wanted and roles I wanted or trajectories I was aspiring to have, that's when things really started happening. Because a couple of things, it forced people to envision me in that role mm-hmm. rather than them envisioning roles for me. And then it started to probably secure more sponsorship because people had that conversation and envisioned me in the role with me. So when I wasn't in the room, they were saying, oh, well, hey, Kim, we just talked about this role. And so you get that voice at the table. And then because I had the delivery track record, I think people were confident being a sponsor because they knew the value I'd bring to the team and that they had I had the ambition to get there. Mm-hmm. So I think, if you compare and contrast Andy versus Kim, you would see he probably had that vision and clarity earlier. But once I got there, things started happening for me too.
There was a few things that you said there that resonate, especially being like a young mom. And I think that too, when you're going throughout your career before you have kids and you know that at some point you want to have them, you kind of question the person that maybe you're going to become. Like, what's going to happen when they come into my life? Whereas and I'm making a broad assumption here, I don't feel that men probably feel that same assumption of when I have kids, what kind of person am I going to be at work? And so it seems, and I see it even in my relationship with my husband, that he always had a clear understanding of where he wanted to go. So I'm really glad that you shared that, as it resonates a lot with myself and probably a lot of the listeners, especially those that are maybe starting a family, which kind of brings me to mom guilt, because we talk about this and we talk about, you understanding where you wanted to go and asking for those roles, but it doesn't come without that sense of, well, if I ask for this role and am I going to be gone more? And if I'm gone more, what am I going to do about my children at home? And am I going to be able to pick them up on time? Or do I need to get a nanny? And like, how do I keep climbing? And all these things go swimming through your brain. And we've had a lot of women on the podcast talk about this. What advice can you give and what have you learned, especially through those younger years, about, quote unquote, there's no balance. So, what does one do that's embracing motherhood and overcoming that feeling of guilt?
Yeah. So confess, I've definitely had mom guilt from time to time. And now that my daughters are older, we talk about it. I think part of what I tried to do in the early days of getting through the mom guilt, and probably even, Andy and I have always had a partnership. And I said from day one, we focused on each other, and we had not only shared career goals, shared relationship goals, but when we started a family, we had shared parenting goals. And so from the start, we've always really tried to help our kids understand what work for mom and dad looks like. Mm. And so maybe that's how, in the early days I coped with the mom guilt a little bit, is because, I would take the girls to the office every once in a while when they had a, Martin Luther King holiday or one of those days where they had off from school, but we were working at the time. They would come for an hour and we'd have lunch and they'd wipe on, draw on the big like whiteboard walls. Like that was heaven for them to have all the markers. And we'd get water in the little like to go coffee cups. This was a long time ago before like Starbucks was everywhere. They just thought that was so fun to have snacks and drink water and draw on the wall. But we, whether it be family days or office visits or showing videos or whatever, we wanted the girls to understand what work was for mom and dad. And that way, when we were having, a good day at work, they had an idea of what that meant. And when we were having a tough day at work, or when we had to go to the field, they knew what pictures of the field were like and stuff. So I think just that helps span the kids' kind of imagination of what you're doing versus reality of what you're doing. And then they, you can have conversations with them about it when you are gone. I think one of the things on the mom guilt side is because we had a co-parenting philosophy, that helped, because then, when it made me more comfortable being away, because I knew the kid, Andy had it, right? They weren't going to be, maybe dressed as perfect as I wanted, or, and dad would probably take them for ice cream or whatever, like house rules don't apply when mom's gone, but it was okay. And the kids loved it. And so that helped me know that when mom's gone, it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And guess what? When dad's gone and mom's home, it's not the end of the world, because we had things and treats that we did when one or the other was gone. I think, another way to bridge the gap of not being home. Now, I would say my mothering philosophy was quality over quantity. So I never wanted to be the one that had to change every diaper and, always put them down for a nap. That's not me. And I'm comfortable with that decision. And so that maybe helped peg me on a certain place on the mom guilt spectrum. But if you have different values, you could be suffering far differently than I ever did. But, I always had flexibility conversations with my supervisors to make sure that I would always get my work done. But, if I needed to go attend the class Valentine party or field day or career day, I would be out of the office for those 2 hours, but I would make up the work and, always meet my deadlines at night or early the next morning. So that track record of reliable and dependable was there. It just was flexing a little bit, and that was always helpful. But I think the turning point for us on really grabbing a gear in our career trajectory, and I would say both of us, was getting a nanny. Mm-hmm. And it was a financial commitment we both totally supported, but Andy was traveling a lot, and it was very heavy travel, so global travel. And then I was starting to need to go to the field as well. So the nanny, we didn't have any family in town at the time. So it allowed us to lead in our careers, knowing that there was a loving, caring, professional person looking after our kids every day. That also allowed us to, because she did some other kind of odd jobs around the house for us, chores type stuff. So on the weekends, we focused on family time. And we were zoo members, we were children's museum members, and we were there all the time when the kids were little.
The partner that is in it with you and that supports you not only in the family life but in your career. So that's number one with Andy. And number two, I think, is the fact that you've made your career, both of your careers, super important to your children, of why it makes you happy, why it makes mom happy, and look at mom's work and look at mom on a helicopter. And I think bringing your kids along your journey versus it being negative, like, I'm sorry that mom's never here, or that I'm busy, versus mom's so excited to go on this trip. Mom loves leading teams. And I think, your daughter, who's now in college, is a perfect example of her wanting to lead in your footsteps. And so I think that's really important for, anyone who has younger children or wants to have children, is bring them along the journey and show them why it makes mom happy. Because at the end of the day, you're showing up better as a mom when your cup is filled. And so thank you for sharing that. One thing that we wanted to ask you about is, throughout 26 years of a career, we assume there's mentors and just sponsors throughout your career. Is there maybe a mentor that you can think of that gave you feedback that maybe you needed, that helped you develop in your career, whether it was something that they noticed in you that said, Kim, you need to work on this? Is there something that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had some great people along the way, for sure. And I would say one of them, there's probably two people I call out because they were, again, at very pivotal points in time. One of them was Cindy Skelton is her name, and she reached out to me at about 10 years in my career. The kids were maybe like 1 and 3, was in the Gulf of Mexico. And there was a project at the time called Each One Reach One. And the few executive women on the leadership team were reaching into the organization at kind of 10-year engineers and having mentoring conversations. And Cindy also had at the time twins and that were maybe 2, and her older daughter was 4. So she had toddlers at home too, but she had reached executive status. And so the conversation was, why aren't you trying to be a team leader? Like, why isn't that on your development plan? Like, what are you concerned about? And so we just had a real conversation about everything I had assumed would be a challenge or a problem as a team leader that she had already done with littles at home. And it was just a beautiful moment of really kind of debunking myths and ceilings I had put on my ability to do the role. So that was amazing. And I'm so grateful for her for do that. Because at the end of the day, she was said, Kim, try it. Like, if you don't like it and it's not working out, you can go back to being an engineer. Like, they will always take you back. But if you don't actually have, the confidence to start asking, for those types of roles, it's probably not going to happen, but you're capable of doing it. You should try it. That was awesome. And then I would say the second mentor that helped me really unlock a greater potential is my actually current boss, Dave Lawler. He's the CEO of BPX Energy. And years ago, he had offered me a VP Ops role, and it was a big stretchy role for me, and I was hesitant to take it, again for all the reasons of, well, I don't know if I can lead an operation, and all the things that were coming through my head of putting a ceiling on my potential that was probably artificial. But again, the conversation was, you can do it. Let's figure, I believe in you. Your track record is there. You bring people along with you, and, just engage the people that have the experience and the gap, the places where you have knowledge gaps. And I've got your back. I'm going to support you along the way. And what we really needed to do at the time was kind of radically transform business performance and bring in innovation into the culture. So he also encouraged me to go to the Stanford executive program. And so I went for 7 weeks to Stanford, lived there, was away from the family, and really focused in the heart of Silicon Valley on my leadership, my ability to bring innovation into the business and disrupt traditional thinking. And just the combination of Dave seeing that in me, and I guess me being willing to trust him and take a chance, just unlocked amazing set of business outcomes. And I got to work with all these incredible people and deliver transformational results that ended up being part of giving BP confidence to make a $10.5 billion acquisition in the new assets. So I think those moments are good, but you have to listen and you have to be willing to take a chance.
I love that you shared how important it is to have those relationships and also those sponsors that support you and give you guidance. And then for you also, though, you have to be open those relationships and take these big challenges that maybe you might have been scared of, because the one thing that you did when you went and you took that course is that you were away from your family. So, it was a take and give, and throughout your career, you show that, you have been successful, but there hasn't been a point where, the company gave to you, but you also gave back to the company. So I think that's really important to just showcase in your success. And we wanted to touch a little bit on your oldest daughter. She is a freshman in college studying mining engineering. You encouraged her to follow your footsteps by pursuing an engineering degree. And of course, I'm sure it had a lot to do with all the videos and pictures and everything you showed her of your career while she was growing up. And so she's entering into the energy industry, which we're really excited to hear about. But unfortunately, we're not really hearing this from the broader student body. They're not really that interested in joining us. And those that are really just focused on energy transition and not really solely on the amazing things that the oil and gas industry still have to do and are going to be alive for many years to come. What can we do, and what have you seen maybe BPX do that's been successful? And also, what advice maybe has your daughter shared with you on getting the younger generation, excited about our industry and wanting to join us?
Yeah, and this is a great question on so many fronts, because the world needs us, right? It needs oil and gas. It needs, but it needs us to do it differently, right? Which is the exciting part, and that's the so what in it. I always try to use when I engage younger engineers, whether it be in college or my daughter's friends, or my younger daughter's friends that are still in high school, is the opportunity is we need problem solvers. We need to deliver our products, but there's a gap in exactly how we do it so that we can deliver a green barrel, right? That true low emitting to no emitting barrel to market. Now in BPX, we're leaning in hard with this in alignment with BP's corporate strategy. And so that's where, as we show up on campus, whether it be recruiting or we're giving talks at the various student organizations, we are all about our culture, because we really do believe in innovation and empowering and giving, real accountability very early in your career, which, everybody values. They want to show up and they want to be accountable. But being accountable on delivering a differential barrel to market is, I think, the hook that they're looking for, and we have to advocate for when we go to campus as opportunities that they'll be opportunities and problems they'll be helping us solve. So outreach and information is important. And, the more we as an industry can get on campus and show what we're doing and why it matters, because again, all the projections show that, yes, we need wind and solar, and they're growing very rapidly for the market share they have, but we still need oil and gas for many, many years. So that's going to provide a career for them. And if we can show them the purpose in that career, that it is part of the transition, that they are making a societal difference, that's what matters. And my daughter particularly wanted to go into it because she wanted to work abroad. And, we had the privilege of spending 4 wonderful years in Trinidad and Tobago. And that expat experience was transformational to us, and living and learning in a different culture, and to our leadership on respecting the value of DE&I every single day. And my daughter values that and is running towards it as part of an expectation of her career. And quite frankly, not many industries afford that. So she's bought into, I know the world needs extraction and it needs energy, and I want to be part of doing that differentially and making an impact. So I think it's just about how we show up when we're engaging that community as an industry, but also as individuals.
Yes, Kim, thank you for sharing. And we just spoke with someone earlier this morning that spent 42 years in the industry, and he said he wished he was starting today. He's like, I wish I was graduating right now, because it couldn't be a more exciting time to change and disrupt the way we did business to a cleaner barrel, like you mentioned. So yeah, it's very exciting for her. The last question that we have, just a short one, was, what advice do you have for any young person coming into the industry? For example, let's say your daughter, when she's going to go on her first day of work, what's that one piece of advice that you're going to give her that you think she'll hold on through the rest of her career?
I would say, be you, be your authentic self. Know that self needs to grow. It'll grow in your impact and your outcomes, your results. But I think it's be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. So just keep working on being your best self. And I've just seen too many people, and there's times I've done it too. So I'm not pretending that I'm not guilty in this space. But the minute I've tried to emulate somebody's leadership style, it just hasn't worked out as much as just working on being a better me. And I think that is pretty sage advice for anybody. Is recognizing we're not perfect, so that's why there needs to be growth in who we are. But if you're I'm a very emotional person, so I will cheer for you as loud as anybody else. And if it's a really impactful commercial on TV, I'm gonna probably cry. But I think, learning how to control that range of emotions in the workplace is still being me, but seeing the growth in that is what you want to work towards.
Thank you so much, Kim. It means a lot for us for you to end with such a great closing on just being your authentic self. Because in a world like today, that's a big struggle for people, with social media, with people wanting to, mimic and imitate others. At the end of the day, the only way that you're going to be successful and also be happy is to be yourself in all circumstances. So thank you for coming on. Your story is incredible. What you have done is incredible. We can't wait to continue to watch you grow in your career and see where you land as you continue to move up. So just thank you so much. And we're just really happy that you spent your time today with us.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. And I love the mission that you're delivering. Thank you for what you're doing for the industry.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. So if you like today's podcast, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know your thoughts. We love to hear from you, and we'll catch you on the next one.